Hey guys, it's Mr. Meyer. I am here in my garage, so in COVID jail, and until I can get till I can get out of COVID jail, this is just going to be the way it's going to be for right now. So what I want to do, you guys, is take you guys through the beginnings of World War One. We're not going to get to any fighting today. What we're going to take a look is we're going to take a look at the events leading up to the beginning of the war. Okay. So we're going to start in the late 1800s and get into the early 1900s. I mentioned to you guys before that this is going to be a pretty complicated situation. There isn't one thing that's going to cause this war. There's going to be a number of different things happening. And so we're going to cruise through these very quickly, you guys. I'm going to go much faster than if I was in class with you, but I want you to pause me. Okay, I'm going to pause me, get the information into your guys' notebooks, just as if I was in class with you guys, and then start me up again, and then we'll go from there. All right. So a lot of historians sort of compare Europe before World War I to a time bomb. Okay, that it was ready to go off. The thing, though, is, in order for a bomb to explode, it doesn't just explode spontaneously all on its own. You need a fuse. We're going to start with here in the late 1800s. So the nice thing, you guys, about this is there's a nifty little acronym we can use when we look at the reasons for the beginning of World War One. Okay, and our acronym is MAIN. We're looking for the main causes of the war. So the M is militarism, the glorification of war. European countries, you guys, had been increasing the size of their armies and navies for years, beginning in the mid-1800s. The Industrial Revolution, you guys, taught them how to make all sorts of bombs and deadlier guns and huge cannons and aircraft and submarines and eventually tanks and trucks. And so they were using all of that technology to increase the size of their military. And the governments were also telling their own citizens, the leaders were telling their own citizens about how war is a legitimate way of solving problems. Okay, the glorification of war, militarism. Then our A is alliances. We're going to talk more about alliances in the next slide. I, imperialism. Okay, competition for colonies. You guys might remember when we began our imperialism unit, I gave you guys a bunch of Post-its, and you guys wrote your flags on them, and then I said, all right, claim stuff around the room. And in some cases, you had 2 or 3 countries claiming the same thing, all right, like my computer monitor or some goofy lamp or Princess Leia in the back of the room there. And you had the same thing going on around the world, especially in Africa. Okay, remember the scramble for Africa? You take a look at Africa here. Look at all of these European countries competing to take territory in Africa. So that's going to increase tension. Then you're going to have nationalism or patriotism. Okay, I mean, you could use either term. I went with nationalism because then my main acronym works. If I went with patriotism, it would be MAPE, and that's not a word. But so in any case, you guys, you had countries, governments telling their own citizens how awesome they were, and at the same time, trash talking their neighbors. And so you had that increased tension because of nationalism. You had increased tension because of imperialism. Alliances, military alliances, you'll see in the next slide, is going to further increase that tension. And then finally, you can't fight a war without armies and navies. And Lord knows the European countries definitely had armies and navies because of this militarism beginning in the mid-1800s. So these are sort of the big picture causes of this war. Now, on top of that, you guys, you had certain events, okay, specific events that were also ratcheting up the tension. For example, you had 3 countries at war for control of southeastern Europe. You had Russia over here, okay? Then you had Austria right here, tiny little Austria, and then even tinier Serbia right down here. And they were all fighting over this territory here in southeast Europe called the Balkans, okay? And long story short, you guys, the Austrians, at least in the short term, managed to gain control over this territory, okay, over this southeastern part of Europe called the Balkans. All right, so that's going to increase this anger, especially between these 2 countries. anger between Russia and Austria. Right now, you just need to jot that down and take my word for it that it's going to be important in a few minutes. But like I say, just stick with me here. All right. So we've got all of these different things. Now, I described to you guys militarism, imperialism, and nationalism. I didn't talk about alliances yet. That's what I'm going to do right here on the next slide. Okay. Now, on top of that small war down here in the Balkans, you see Serbia, Austria, and Russia all fighting for control down here. Okay. You also had something going on up here in Northern Europe or in Central Europe. Germany, you guys may or may not remember, Germany was one of those imperial countries back in the late 1800s. They were part of the scramble for Africa. They were sending ships all the way down to Africa, just like the French were and the British were and, the Italians were. And, and like I said, they were part of that scramble for Africa, and they were building up their navy. And by the early 20th century, they were getting really, really good at it. Okay. They were building all larger warships. They were building faster warships, ships with bigger guns than what the British had at that time. And then on top of everything else, and we'll get more into this next week, the Germans developed an entirely new type of boat that was leaps and bounds better than anybody else, and that was a submarine. And so all of these things are increasing that tension between these two countries here. Okay, but I want to finish out the slide, you guys, talking a little bit about alliances. Now, if we were in a room together, I'd be having a conversation with you. But right now, I'm just going to pretend to have this conversation with you. That if you've got, let's say, a dozen countries here in Europe, or about a dozen countries, and you can sense it that war is coming. Would you rather fight the war by yourself, or would you rather have friends? Okay, would you rather have allies? And so what we started to see is the building up of two different alliances. Okay, two different alliances. The first one is called the Triple Alliance, obviously. And you can see the Triple Alliance was Austria-Hungary. That's one country. Today it's two, but back in the day it was one country. Germany, right here, and then Italy. All right, thankfully, I got a half-decent map right here to show us the Triple Alliance. You can see they're obviously all connected to each other, okay? They've all got the same goals. They want to build up their empires, just like France and Britain and Russia. Germany is becoming a military and an industrial power. Austria is actually kind of on its way down, okay? And Italy joins with these two because, well, essentially the Italians were looking for a friend. You can see it right here. We got Germany right here, we got Austria right here, and then Italy right here, all toasting each other, toasting their brand new friendship. Meanwhile, we've also got the Triple Entente. Okay, the Triple Entente. We have France, we've got Great Britain, and then lastly we have Russia. Okay. Originally started off, you guys, the Triple Entente originally started off as a dual entente between these two countries. That word entente is a French word, basically means alliance. And so it was originally a dual entente between these two countries. But it's almost like if you imagine like you're in elementary school and you're playing kickball or during PE or whatever, and everyone's picking teams, and you get down toward the end of the team picking, and like Russia is one of the last countries left. Just sort of standing out there by itself. And, the Russians actually asked the French, and they said, hey, can we join your team? And the French basically said, yeah, we'll get back to you. Hang out a little bit, right? And the French and the British talked about it, and eventually they decided, yeah, we'll let Russia in. So you wind up with these two alliances here, which basically included all of Europe's biggest, most powerful countries, okay? The war would eventually pull in other countries as well, but for right now, we're just going to start with these 6 ones. Okay. Now, again, if you're going to light off a bomb, you're going to need a spark, and so the spark is going to be something that happened June 28th, 1914. So, what goes down on that day? Well, it all starts with our protagonist here. Okay, I'm not going to call him our hero. But he's our protagonist. He's our main character. He is Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria. And he is on tour. Okay, he is on tour through the region of Bosnia. And Bosnia is in the southern part of Austria at this point, 100 years ago, or 107 years ago, and the Archduke is basically on tour. He's traveling throughout the country. This is before TV. Most people don't have radios. And so he basically figured that if he's going to inherit this empire, right now he's Archduke, okay, Franz Ferdinand, but he's eventually going to become king or emperor of Austria, because his uncle, the emperor, is old and in bad health, and everyone's just basically figuring this guy's going to die, any second, and then eventually Franz Ferdinand is going to inherit the throne. So before he becomes emperor, Ferdinand says, I'm going to go on tour. I want people to see me. I want to meet local leaders because I'm going to have to work with these people. Okay. And as I said just a minute ago, he is going to be the future emperor of Austria-Hungary. And so what he does is he basically spends government money, and they buy 5 cars, okay, 5 brand new, at that time, Mercedes-Benzes. Ferdinand insisted that his car was going to be the convertible, okay, because convertibles are cool. And so, he and his wife, Sophia, and all of their assistants and advisors and bodyguards and whatnot, they are all going to go off, and they're going to tour the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And so what we see here is they eventually make their way to the Bosnian city of Sarajevo. Okay, the Bosnian city of Sarajevo. And when they reach Sarajevo, because Ferdinand had never met the mayor of Sarajevo before, he didn't speak the language down there. He didn't, have a whole lot of contact with these people beforehand. And so he and his wife and his advisors, they're trying to figure out, what's the best way for me to meet everybody? Okay. What's the best way for me to meet everybody? Anyway, so we get Ferdinand in Sarajevo trying to figure out what's the best way to meet people. And so, they thought about, well, what if we have like a big fancy ball, Cinderella style? And he said, nah, that's just like for the rich. I want regular people to see me. And so somebody, I don't honestly remember who, but one of the local officials in Sarajevo said, what about a parade? Parades are cheap. We'll get a couple of bands. We'll get some local dignitaries. They'll march in the parade. We've got the best parade float possible. We've got 5 cars. Okay, 5 cars, which to us, I mean, if you watch the Rose Bowl parade over the weekend, you guys, you see these like convertible cars like chugging down, Colorado Boulevard. It's like no big deal. Okay, but in 1914, most Europeans hadn't seen a car yet. It's certainly not one up close. And having 5 of these things, and one of them be a convertible, on top of everything else, that was going to be the coolest thing ever. And so they said, yes, that's what we're going to do. Okay, we're going to launch a parade down the streets of Sarajevo. Ferdinand will get to see everybody. People will get to see him, so that when eventually he becomes Austrian emperor of all of this region, including the city of Sarajevo, people will know who he is. Okay, it's going to make that transition to being leader that much better. So that is where we're going to leave it for right now, because what goes down June 28th, 1914 is going to be absolutely mind-blowing. Hopefully I will be in class with you guys, okay, to tell you the end of the story. All I'm doing at this point is setting it up, but you guys are going to see the next time we talk about this, whether it's in this format or whether it's in person, like I said, is going to be absolutely bananas. Okay, I hope to see you guys soon. You guys can go ahead and stop me now, and then go ahead and get started on that reading and writing assignment on the sinking of the Lusitania. All right, over and out.